Hi, everybody. My name's Sasha. Thanks for joining me here. I'm recording this from the basement of a yoga studio that I teach at in Brooklyn into my headphones, and that is one of the reasons why I am calling this podcast I Am a Mess, but also delicious, because it is okay for life to be a little bit messy and also an absolute delight at the same time. Sometimes they just go together, like me, for example. So I'll just give you a little bit of background of why I'm here and why I'm doing this. I grew up in California and was always around nature, so I had that hippie instillment very early on, connection to the earth and animals and whatnot. And growing up, I was a dancer, still am, just not as involved as I was as a child. And it was a great source of joy for me. Love dance, very connected to movement. My brothers played sports, so we were always interested in our bodies, but not in a way that was like obsessive. We just liked to be active. We were an active family and traveled a lot, so was into different cultures. My parents are amazing artists and also teachers, so we were really lucky to have been really well versed in the arts and movement and being outdoors, especially living in Cali. And over time, my mom was always interested in, as one is in the late 80s and 90s and 2000s, in fad diets that came out, not in a bad way, just interested in health and what people had to say about it and what the newest findings were. So I took a liking to that early on too, or not really a liking, just more so like a curiosity and interest. And I danced in college at Santa Barbara, had a great time, and studied theater as well, and a little bit of French, studied abroad there, had a really great time. And over time in grad school, I was really confused, a little bit lost. I was studying fashion merchandising. I tried to translate costume design into fashion, and it goes a little bit hand in hand, but I was just lost. My parents both teach at Academy of Art, and so I found that program there, the fashion merchandising master's program. And in that program, I actually started learning a lot more about sustainability in fashion. And I was already really into recycling and doing my part for the planet and trying to save the animals and world peace, la la la. But I was really interested in that. I just didn't really know what to do about it. Like I was an activist, but I wasn't an activist, if that makes sense. So as I was studying sustainability in fashion and getting more involved in that, I was reading more books on nutrition that my mom had, and I got into Skinny Bitch at some point and learned about more about the slaughterhouse process. And at first I said, I'm gonna, just be really choosy about what I eat. And then I said, absolutely not, no more meat, quit cold turkey. And I'm not saying that everybody has to do that to get invested and interested in food and health, but that was my journey in a nutshell. And around that same time, to supplement my dance practice, I was not dancing competitively really, but dancing in a hip hop group with some of my friends from high school, and dancing in San Francisco. And around that time I also found yoga at a gym. I think I went like by accident. I just wanted to take a class, and I would sit in Shavasana, which is the last pose, often known as corpse pose or final resting pose, and I would just like cry my eyes out like a baby. And I thought, what is going on? This is bananas. It just felt like my heart cracked open, and I didn't know why, but it was such a therapeutic release, and I was really intrigued. And so I kept coming back, and I would envision myself teaching, and I thought, I can maybe, like what would I say if I was in front of the class? I would love to share this work. And I noticed how it went hand in hand with the my interest in the environment and taking care of the planet, even if it was in fashion. And so everything kind of melded together. I wound up moving to New York on a whim, not really on a whim. I left an 8-year off and on relationship that had been really off and on since high school. And, it's during that time when you're figuring a lot of stuff out about yourself and your life. And it was all on good terms. It was just, it felt tumultuous at the time, and moved to New York thanks to the grace of some really dear friends who took me in and sheltered me, and we took care of each other. And I found a really terrible job in a quote-unquote sustainable scarf company, which did not really do anything for my career. It did. I did learn a lot about how to run a business, especially a small business, and hopefully a sustainable one at that. I couldn't find a job at any of the sustainable fashion companies that I had researched. And so I wound up finding a job at Integrative Nutrition, which eventually I also wound up doing the health coach training program there. After I did my yoga teacher training, I fell into a really great relationship in class with my teacher, Anya Porter, who became a friend and a mentor, still is. Shout out Anya. And kind of all just snowballed from there. So here I am. This is my 8th year in New York City. Lived in Brooklyn for most of it, the majority. And I'm just rolling on this wellness and yoga and nutrition train, path, river, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes it feels like a tidal wave. Sometimes it's really calm, like a pond. But it's certainly been enlightening, and what I keep learning over and over again is that we don't know everything. There's always something to know. One of my teachers, Jenny Arthur, I remember, used to say that in my first 200-hour, like, we don't need to know everything, and it's okay to not know everything. It's actually such a relief. So that's been instilled. That was instilled early on, and I'm very grateful for that, because in the beginning, I think you judge yourself and compare yourself a lot, especially to other yoga teachers, and especially in New York City when they're cranking teachers out, which is amazing, like blessings. It's such great work, and so much of it is needed. And even if you don't wind up teaching, I just think a teacher training is so advantageous just to your life as a whole, and to your heart, and to your personal well-being. And alongside teaching yoga, I was also coaching. I still am. I like to call it wellness consulting now, and that feels a little bit more appropriate for what I'm doing, because it's really just a support system that does have to do with nutrition. There is a lot to learn always about food and what's best for you, especially after I've been studying Ayurveda a little bit more closely. And it all goes really nicely together. I was using things that I learned in yoga to supplement my coaching, and I still always do, and they blended together really nicely in my personal life. And over the years, I have taught group classes, private classes, corporate events, small events, really big events, over 100 people, at the Brooklyn Museum, for example, and Sound Off, which are those headphones, the silent disco headphones, on retreats around the world, most recently in Bali, and I spent the summer teaching in Paris, which was amazing, and Provence. So I've had a lot of opportunities not only to teach yoga, and most recently in the past couple of years meditation, but also infuse it with food. I did mindful morning events with my friends Paige and Aditi. Shout out, love you guys, my sisters. And it was a really wonderful way to bring together the concepts of yoga, like mindfulness, paying attention, being good to yourself, noticing what comes up, how you treat yourself, how you treat other people, and how that translated to food. And not only your relationship with food, but the food that you choose to eat, even where you spend your dollars. Like, there are so many up and coming and established also conscious brands out there that we would partner with. And so for Mindful Morning, Aditi and I would lead always meditation, sometimes yoga as well. And we'd have a conversation after and just make it really personal and not too heady. We didn't want it to be something where you felt like you had to know a lot already about meditation. You could ask questions about mindfulness, about nutrition, food, yoga, what it means to be a wellness entrepreneur, all of that, and just how it all flows together. And really my goal with this is how to infuse ancient wisdom into your modern day life. So with this particular podcast, funny enough, Aditi and I actually recorded several Mindful Morning podcasts, which I'll either introduce here or separately, or it will just be a secret forever, and we'll bring back the guests. But our goal was also, one and the same, just to make this a more conversational topic that people can talk about outside of the yoga studio and outside of the meditation cushion, and just in public and with each other, and ask questions and be curious and learn with each other. And then with this particular podcast, coming back to that, I am a mess, but also delicious. We'll see if that title sticks. But people were really into it, so I was like, yeah, let's try it. So anyways, with this podcast, I am just hoping to remind all of you that it's okay for these two things to exist together. Because when I first started this, this path, this work, especially in yoga, when I was studying it to become a teacher, I thought to myself, oh shit, excuse my language, there are curse words, earmuffs, children. So I thought to myself, do I have to relinquish all of my worldly goods in order to be a yogi in the world? And the more I learn about it, the more I understand that the challenge is actually to be a human in the world, and also to be a yogi, and to do those things together. Like, how can they exist together? How can I be a human and maybe mess up sometimes, make mistakes, be a little bit of a disaster like this past year, which that'll be another podcast topic. Talk to you about the year I've had and even the past couple years. Because if things are a little bit, off track, off color, off topic of what you're hoping to focus on, there's also a lot of light, a lot of deliciousness, a lot of nourishment and gratitude, and those seem like they can be on really opposite ends of the spectrum sometimes. I would pour my food in a bowl and I thought it looked like, a piece of beautiful art, but if you look at Michelin star chefs, they're using fucking tweezers to place things and make it look really pretty. And I thought that my food also looked really pretty, and even though it was a little bit of a mess, there was something really beautiful about it because I made it, and it was delicious. I thought it was delicious. I think it still is. And I'm still learning a lot in the kitchen, and also about myself. I'm enrolled in a 2-year meditation program coming up starting next month, and I'm always learning. I take weekly classes from senior Iyengar teachers in New York City. We're so blessed here to have such incredible teachers. I feel so blessed to have found them. Even my peers, I learned so much from my friends here. I just have this gorgeous community of both men and women, but mostly women in New York City, who have just been my angels and my soul sisters for, in every sense of that word. And you know who you are if you're listening to this. And they've inspired me not only to do this, but to do this work. We're on the phone with each other, sending encouraging texts and calling and sending memes to make each other laugh when things feel like a total shit show, like we have no control over anything. And we are here not only to say it's going to be okay, but also it's okay to feel like a little bit of a disaster sometimes. It's okay for things to feel really messy and challenging and hard, but also laugh at each other and laugh about it and find a little bit of light in the situation, not to diminish feelings or, feeling challenged or down. All of those things belong together. Tara Brach says all of the feelings belong. And I've always loved that expression because it just allows us to be a human, and it's such a relief. Like, we don't have to be this Zen yoga master, even if we're studying it, even if it's our life's work. We don't have to be this like perfect gluten-free vegan, plant-based superfood fucking foodie. We can just be who we are, and we can eat those things. Yeah, like blessings. That's what I do. Like, I am typical type A, like wake up in the morning as long as I have time. I sit and meditate. I love to oil pull. I journal. I like make my own breakfast. I make most of my own meals, and I'm cool with that. Like, that's what wellness is to me. And it's not, that for every person. I love to practice yoga at home and in the morning. I have YouTube videos now, so you can do it at home. YouTube, Sasha Yoga Wellness. Subscribe. Tell your friends. And where was I going with this? Yeah, anyways. The point is, I firmly believe that we can be on a path of wellness and well-being and mindfulness and make it our own. We can infuse these ancient practices and this ancient wisdom into our daily lives in ways that work really well for us. And that might shift. It might shift from day to day. Like, one of my besties from college, she goes by Stevie now, but I know her stuff. Stevie Nelson, love you. I actually know her as Snels because we're both S. Nelson. Fun fact. So Snels reminded me a long time ago that you have to find what works for you. Like, if you get up and meditate and you have to force yourself to do that in a way that feels really, really not true to you, then maybe try something else. Like, Snels paints in the morning. She watercolors, and some friends just like to journal, and maybe you just sit quietly with yourself and read a few pages of a real book on paper. And maybe it's petting your dog or your cat or your hamster for 5 minutes, or just sitting and sipping your coffee slowly. And I don't drink coffee, in my matcha. Maybe it's cooking breakfast, like whatever it is for you that works really well. These practices have been around for centuries because they work. And in America, I think, especially now in modern day with technology, like, we have so much to share. There's so much information floating around. It can get really confusing on, like, what do I do? It's not like we're coming from these indigenous cultures who had nothing to do but look at and study the stars all day and, sit by a fire and tell stories of ancient wisdom instead of, reading books about it. Everything was all verbal, and they'd figured out these practices out of a means of survival, whether that's like, like grandma's chicken noodle soup. It's there for a reason because it works. And, I don't eat meat anymore, but I don't bash on people or cultures that do, because it's around for a reason, and we've made it our own to suit our modern day life. But I think it's also really important just to go back and revisit those things and see how it can work for us and benefit us, and understand that it's okay to be confused about it. It's okay to switch it up, and especially if you have children, like, one day something might work really well for you and the next day it might not. Like your yoga practice, one day you might be able to, like, kick up into a handstand. The next day you're like, there's no way I'm going upside down today, I don't feel well. Or you take a wrong step off the sidewalk and your leg hurts. Like, you just have to modify so in a way to suit your needs, and understand that there's always something that you can do to connect to yourself. whether you feel like a total train wreck or you feel like a glowing Buddha, everything can exist in the same plane. We're all human. Thank God. Permission to like be a human, not a robot, and to like have feelings and feel vulnerable and sad and challenged, but also like so joyful and proud of yourself for how far you've come and amazed at the capabilities of your body and your organs and your bones and muscles. Like, I can walk upstairs. Like, that's so awesome. I can go upside down. Not everybody can, but for me, that was huge to be able to balance on my hands after years of being a dancer and not really being able to finally figure that out in yoga. Like, it seems like I was just thrilled. So all of these can exist together, and that is what this is about, being a little bit of a mess, but also enjoying the deliciousness of yourself, of the people around you, and of life in general. So I really appreciate you being here, like really, truly, for listening, for being interested, and I hope that you can just appreciate yourself for showing up, for also being interested in this for yourself, for the health of yourself and the general collective health of the community as a whole, because it does start with you. And if you can start with yourself, then you can let that trickle off into your immediate surroundings, your friends, your family, your children, your pets. And it will be a beautiful ripple effect throughout the community. Not only permission to like mess up and be a human, but also permission to take really good care of yourself and do whatever it takes, and be willing to experiment around that. So I do plan to interview people in this community who are doing great work and share that with you. One of my greatest joys is to be able to share this work with a wide variety, not only of listeners and people and students and clients and friends and family, but also with entrepreneurs and teachers and coaches and cooks, chefs, everything in between. So again, thank you so much. New Year's blessings. Happy 2019. And let's fucking go. Be a mess and also really delicious. Have a great day, you guys. Thanks.